So welcome everybody to the Enrich podcast or interview series where I would like to share more wisdom about Virginia Satir, one of the role models who influenced my path professionally, also personally. And there are a few people on this path who helped me and facilitated this journey forward. And I often talk about these people who are my mentors. To many of you who asked how my journey started, who did I learn from, what are the courses, what are the opportunities, who do I need to be in contact with, how, and all this. So I thought it would be a great idea to bring one of my mentors and teachers and also a dear soul friend, Sharon Loeschen. And welcome, Sharon, to this virtual table.
Thank you. Thank you.
So let me just share a few words how our paths crossed and how this encounter with you also influenced my life, our family and professional life. And there are very few people who I really respect and admire and I welcome into my life who are my mentors, and you're one of them. So I wanted first of all to thank you for being who you are, for doing what you do. Yes, and when I was searching for more knowledge and confirmation that I can do what I wanted to do, to work with families, to work with individuals on a deeper level, on a systemic level.
Yes.
And I started by then, I had already learned more about NLP and coaching, and I've learned about 3 different models who were part of the original NLP creation, neuro-linguistic programming. And Fritz Perls, Gestalt therapist, and Milton Erickson, who was the hypnosis, and Virginia Satir, the grandmother of family therapy.
Yes.
But there was not much information about Virginia, and I started finding out and searching for different organizations or ways to learn more. And that's how I found out about the Virginia Satir International Network. And I thought, oh, what do they offer? And I saw this wonderful course, Enrich Your Relationships. Was it additional Enrich relationship
with yourself and others?
Yourself and others.
Yes, which is a whole piece of why Satir is different, because it starts with self, right?
Absolutely. And for me, that resonated. And I signed up, and that's how I met you. Across the ocean, when you kindly guided me through this course. And then I felt so connected and inspired, but also by having these conversations with you. And I never had that level of care or support before, because it was very much, in the corporate world, and I was never in the therapeutic world. So it's very new and a different way of relating to people. And the way how you created space for me to explore. And then I took it the next level of the course. And then we connected more, and I started training, and I started learning, I started reading. And all this journey was so potent for my own transformation and the transition into this world of systemic field connected to Virginia, the family reconstruction process, the parts party, your books that I read, and then that inspired. Actually, it was a big inspiration for the work that I did with clients in the coaching world. And the program that you inspired me. Remember, you said with the Enrich Your Relationship program and the book, and you said, why don't you do more multimedia kind of proposition, not just the book? So I did, and then this. It's just wonderful how you did it. And also at the same time, you were the president of the Virginia Satir Network. Not only you wrote books, but you also create a community, and you foster the community of people who are on a mission to bring more love, reach, and blame-free environment. So tell us more about you and your values and how your path led you to Virginia, please.
Well, I like what you said about blame-free, because I think it is now at a cancerous epidemic level. And I'm from the United States and very ashamed to say that we're leading the way with this blaming president who's labeling everyone, and all of the feeling of who's superior and who's inferior. And all of that is so not what we're about. Satir is about seeing everybody that has different roles, but is equal in their humanity and in their personhood, no matter what their, nationality, religion, ethnicity. It's deep coming together at that human level. And I've never felt it so strongly as I'm feeling it today. It's absolutely a critical piece in our world to feel that equality and value each other and respect each other, and also learn how to deal with pain other than blaming or withdrawing, So all of that, I guess, was is just continually reinforced my desire to stay in this work, and to truly know how transformative it is. I worked with somebody just this week who had lost a lot of weight, had maintained she'd been an overeater, and she lost a lot of weight for 5 years. And then all of a sudden something got triggered, came in, did one session. She said, "Sharon, I have no desire to go back to that. It's gone." Because we did that deep transformative work. It wasn't anything about behaviors. How much are you eating? How are you going to stop that behavior? No, we just did the emotional work that was driving something that had gotten triggered. And it's just transformative. And once you see that and you feel the potential, and you also, for me, it's sacred to work with people. And Virginia called it the seed model. That her belief was that you work on potential, not pathology. So just like a seed, she said, you can't make a plant grow by jerking on it. You make a plant grow by getting the right soil, nurturing it, getting the right water, light, and keeping the weeds out and getting the weeds out that are in the way. And that's the same thing for the process of coaching or therapy or any kind of helping therapeutic process. That was her philosophy, which is now really, really supported by all the research of positive psychology, of Martin Seligman, of Dan Siegel, of all the mindfulness. I am continually reinforced for the work that I learned from Virginia. She didn't have all the words, but she knew how to make change happen. She understood that. So I've kind of started at the top with you rather than my history, but I just am feeling so strongly today about we're needed in the world even more than we've ever been. But to back up in terms of how I got involved with Virginia in the beginning, I was in graduate school and I was assigned to work with a step family. And I found her book. She was the first person to publish a book on family therapy called Conjoint Family Therapy. And I found the book, and it helped me immensely. So then many years later, I saw that she was going to be doing a 4-day workshop. And I went to the workshop, and I learned more than I had learned in 2 years in graduate school in 4 days. And I listened to those tapes over and over and over. And I can still remember a lot of it, watching her work. And then I didn't see her again for maybe 10 or 15 years. And then I saw an ad. I was in Los Angeles, and she was going to be doing a 2-day presentation on working with couples. And I went, and she announced that she believed that the most important work you do ever as a person in a helping role is work on yourself. And so she created these month-long intensives. And she announced that she was doing one. So I signed up. And I went for that summer, and then I went the next summer, and then she died. And the reputation she had was that she had magical healing ability, and what she did, nobody else could do. And I have no doubt that she had her own healing energy, but I studied her enough to know, yeah, other people learn to do what she did. Okay. So then that's when I wrote the books, The Satir Process, and just began to teach what I thought. And I continue to learn what I teach. You know, you just learn at a deeper level. So I go, oh, okay, yes, I get it even deeper. So I think it's like listening to a symphony. You just, oh, wow, you hear more and more because it's so rich in what she's saying. It's so many levels, you know, of integration, of how you really facilitate healing with people. So I said a lot, Darya.
That's brilliant. It's a great introduction into Virginia. Many people don't know much about her.
Right.
So if you could just share, as you did, you know, the seed model is just if you could give a little perspective, or maybe introducing the terms and
Yes.
a bit of practical sort of introduction to the model itself. What are the beliefs and a bit of process. What does the process involve?
Right. Well, let me start with the concepts first, and then we'll go to the process. But the seed model, she also would call the growth model, as opposed to what she said, most of the families and the countries of the world operate on a hierarchical model, where relationships are built on power. Someone's dominating in a role, and someone is submitting in a role. And again, like I started out today, is that the whole issue of who's equal, that we're all equal as human beings. We have different roles. And so she works a lot on saying, in a seed model, you have a baby, and the baby a parent needs to take care of the baby, but she would often say, look at that baby and know that that baby is your teacher. That baby is going to teach you a lot, right? So honoring the humanity in that baby. She also used to say, people have feelings whether they're 2 or 92. Mm-hmm. And that is so simple, and it is so profound, because people do not believe 2-year-olds are going to remember or feel what they experienced. And if your grandmother is 90, you really don't believe she's having all the feelings that she's having. They just dismiss both ends of the continuum. So anyhow, that's the first part of the growth model, as opposed to a hierarchical model, is you honor the equality of the human being, and you honor the uniqueness of each person, and not only honor it, you celebrate it. To celebrate the differences in cultures and in genders, you know, and that's hard to do, you know, dealing with all the differences, everyday life, like the difference between neatness and order. You live with somebody and they're messy and you're neat, and how you appreciate that difference and deal with that. So it can be very day-to-day kind of things of how you honor the differences. The model also has to do with understanding the concept of change, and that change is the only constant. It's the paradox, okay? And that flexibility is the key. And that what she talked about, she used the word congruence to mean mental health, okay? And that somebody who's mentally healthy is capable of flexing, so that now your child is 2 and is a toddler. How are you going to flex and adapt to that new context of a kid who's throwing tantrums in the store, you know? And then the kid gets to be a preteen and they're getting snarky with you. And how do you adjust to that level? It's constant change developmentally for family members as the children grow, as the couple grows, as their lives change. All those transitions demand flexibility. And the opposite of mental health is rigidity or chaos, one of the two. Okay, so you're flexible, you're adaptive. And in that concept of congruence, which is part of the seed model, she talked about it at so many levels. One level is this we would call authenticity, speaking your truth with respect to the person or the situation you're in, always honoring yourself, the other, and the context. But also being what I would call aligned internally, so that there's internal harmony, so there's free flow of your energy. And when that's there, then you can connect and flow with the energy of somebody else. And that, she called that making contact. You're being congruent, you can make contact. And she used to say, you cannot make contact if you're in a defensive stance. Whether that's blaming or placating or withdrawing, whatever it is, distracting, you cannot be fully made contact. And as you said, she was considered the grandmother of family therapy. And ultimately, again, with Satir, it's always like the Satir is, the simple is profound. It just occurred to me the other day, Darya. Ultimately, what family therapy is about is truly helping members make contact with each other. With all the patterns and all the defenses that get set up, and so that's what she would do. She would go in, the first thing she would do was that she would work on making contact, full contact with each person in that family, if it was a family she was working with. And then she would work on helping them make contact with each other. And she would do it 2 at a time. So it might be mom and dad, it might be mom and son, father and daughter, whatever. And the reason was because she fully believed that you could not make contact with 2 other people at the same time. Full contact is one-on-one. And she would honor before and after she did that interaction with everybody else who was involved in the system. But at the moment, it was fully about making contact. And the way she did that, when we talk about process, was a lot of validating of what that person, each person was experiencing, understanding that perception is not reality, but this member has this perception, and that she would validate that this is what you're perceiving, and this is what you're perceiving. And then let's figure out how you got to that perception. What are the expectations that you carry of your wife, your husband, your son, your daughter, whatever? What are the expectations you carry of yourself? What are the beliefs that you carry about yourself? And the most critical belief in her model is about what you believe about yourself. So when you innately feel your worth and your lovability, then the way you perceive the world is going to be so different in terms of the way you're going to interact with the world. So that's what she was always working on, and hence helping people reconnect with it, because she believes you were born with it. But through life, you get disconnected with it.
That's so valuable just for us to hear, because there's not a lot of resources, although you do have some resources on the website that people can have access to, or they can purchase as well, right? The videotapes and...
Yes. If you become a member, you can see lots of videos of Virginia's work. And I'm always astounded. As the president, I get new students joining all the time. And that's how they get to us. These films are old, but a student sees this in graduate school somewhere and goes, oh my God, this is what I've been looking for.
Yeah.
This is the soul,
Yes, and it's not much on YouTube. I've watched all of them, and then when I managed to get hold of some of the deeper tapes and the longer tapes, that's when it also unveils the patterns, the strategies that she used, maybe intuitively, but also then she put together in models, and
Yes.
now they're in most in major books on psychology and therapy.
Mm-hmm.
Virginia is part of the systemic family systems therapy, and
Yes.
she's one of the leaders in that field.
Mm-hmm.
But again, not many people are now into uh, coaching and the organizational dynamics. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
Still, they use some of the models, but they don't necessarily know that they are from Virginia. So,
Right.
if you could share a little bit more about which other models or concepts that Virginia put together and was
Mm-hmm.
sort of the most effective ones that people in organizations, in families, and in different helping professions could use
Mm-hmm.
that would allow them um, to live a better life, to be more effective.
Mm-hmm. Well, one of them is, she was the first person to conceptualize that not only is there literally a system with rules and roles that govern a family unit, there's also an internal system for each human being that has a self or a spirit and parts that is also ruled by rules, roles, and the parts are, for example, let's say you decide you want to lose weight, and you have one part that says, I should lose weight, and then right away you have a part that goes, but I don't want to change. That right there, the minute you can help somebody identify the two parts, you have begun to help them develop what she just called being in charge of yourself, which Richard Schwartz's model internal family systems calls self-leadership. But it is so empowering because people actually think in parts. And Virginia created a process called a parts party, where she kind of tried to help people look at their parts. Um, and then Dick Schwartz really put it into a model so you could understand how to literally help your parts. And I find that, as an addition to Virginia's work, immensely helpful. A lot of people in the therapy world say, well, she's not cognitive behavioral, and that's what's evidence-based. Well, actually, she was, because it's an integrative model, because she worked with the body, always what's going on in your body, what's going on in your imagery, but she also worked with what's going on in your mind. What are your perceptions? What are your beliefs? What are your expectations, which is cognitive? She also worked on behavioral because let's say that you placate your husband. I watched her watch this woman's defense mechanism was to placate her husband at all costs and was living in resentment because of it. Just kind of the seething anger and kind of a passive aggressive stuff. So Virginia said, okay, I would like for you to get down on your knee and just like you're begging your husband. Okay. And now I'd like for you to stand up and breathe. Stand on 2 feet, breathe, and look at him eye to eye. And tell me one thing that you would like to ask of him. Just one teeny tiny thing. And she's getting all nervous, and Virginia said, I'm right here. And, you're safe. You can breathe. And she says, would you make the coffee in the morning? And he said, well, sure. And it was like life-changing for her. It still gives me goosebumps, okay? It was a little change, but it was a behavioral change right there. So that's cognitive, it's behavioral, you know. But what she did that also now is, highly researched with the emotional focus therapy model, is that she also went into what are the feelings underneath the feelings. We all got reactive feelings, but we also have heart feelings. Like I might be really mad and showing a lot of anger, and what's underneath is I'm terrified that I'm going into surgery tomorrow, and I'm just letting it out on everybody here. Or my child comes home and I scream at them because they're an hour late from the curfew, and underneath I've been terrified they were dead in the ditch somewhere, you know. So helping people to get aware, what is this reactive feeling? What's underneath it? What's my heart feeling, and what's my heart yearning for? Oh, my heart is yearning to know he's safe. Oh, thank God you're home. Okay, I was so worried. What a different reception. And then you could talk later about, you know, I need you to let me know where you are, but instead of, or you're grounded for a week or whatever, you know, getting an awareness, a pause, coming from your heart place rather than from a reactive place.
Yeah, that's a beautiful, actually. Also, it reminds me of different stances that Virginia put together, and that everybody uses under stress across different nations and different gender. The placating stance, and she used almost the body like a sculpting, like a Play-Doh,
Yeah.
and it was very useful. And maybe only partly Gestalt Fritz Perls did a little bit of acting out.
Yes.
Where there was the two chairs where dusk, you know, just show me how you would say this to your child, or how did the child react with all the limbs and the facial expression. And I think Virginia, not only she allowed the family members to feel accepted and seen and valued for whoever they were and whatever they did, but also almost structured it into different stances. One was the hating, one was the blaming, one was the super reasonable or computing stance, one was the irrelevant or distracting. And I think you added the withdrawal,
yes,
which I agree. It's more like a freeze in polyvagal theory.
Yes.
I think that is a stance where we freeze and we move, we shut down. We cannot even
shut down. Yes.
And it's one of the toughest one now that I work in relationship field, when both partners use the withdrawal stance and shut down. It's like a kiss of death for the couple. And they parallel, and then they start moving away from each other. There's no contact. There's no meeting of sharing the inside, what's on the inside.
Right. They've become extremely protected.
Yeah. That was very, very helpful. And how is it now for you? Taking this journey, having the journey, integrating the Virginia's work. What is Sharon's work? What do you now do, and how do you bring this to more people?
Well, when you took, let me say that when Virginia died, then I wrote the book, The Satir Process, which was my concept of the 6 major phases that were her process. And she might do it in 5 minutes, she might do it in 5 days, and be back and forth, but I taught it in linear roadmaps so that people could learn, starting with making contact, spirit to spirit. And that's what's really different. It's not head to head, it's a true heart-to-heart place with people, fully present with them, and then validating them by listening to their values, listening for their inner resources, listening for their feelings, and reflecting those, then facilitating awareness with them of where their pain is coming from. What part, do they have a blaming part, and is that causing problems, okay? And then promoting acceptance, because the paradox is that if you try to change something, okay, let's say I own that I'm a blamer, that I have a blaming part, and then I say I'm going to change it, and I don't go through the step first of accepting that that's a part of me, it came for a reason, and truly accept it, it'll usually backfire if I try to change it. So acceptance and awareness go together. And then comes conscious, like making choices and changes around that. Okay. And then finally reinforcing. So helping the person either practice in reality, like you're talking about with Gestalt, maybe saying something different, or in the reality of a family or a couple, helping them talk to each other differently, or literally in your own brain rehearsing, you know, this is the way I'm going to deal with my boss, and this is how I'm going to do it. And I'm rehearsing it over and over and over. So it becomes more congruent, more integrated. So that's the process. And what I did in the Satir Process book is I say, this is how you would do this phase with an individual, couple, and a family. And it was 37 skills altogether in those phases. So then, many years later, my colleague Margarita Suarez, who was the executive director of the Satir organization at that time, called me and said that she was applying those same phases in her own life and that she thought we could create something for the general public. So that's what you took, the Enriching program. Then I'm teaching that to a group of paraprofessionals who are ex-gang members who are out on the street mentoring in South Los Angeles. And I realized they have done a lot of personal growth through this. But they still needed what I would consider really solid mentoring skills. So then I created the program that I'm now leading, which is Satir Coaching and Mentoring Training around the world. Because, you know, when I trained with Virginia, there was every profession you could imagine there. There was no such thing as only therapists or only social workers. You know, we had pastors, we had homemakers, we had professional musicians, everything, because it's the human condition, right? And so when I created the coaching program, my goal was to have more people be able to help more people, to increase the paradigm.
Well, that's new. I haven't done that. I'd better sign up myself. But tell us about that program and what you cover and what is special about that versus other programs.
Mm-hmm. You say what is special?
Yeah, what is special in this Satir coaching program versus other coaching programs?
Well, again, I think it goes back to the philosophy, first of all, that it's really held at the level of the self, of the spirit, that it comes from that place of growing in yourself first, working on yourself, and relating congruently and teaching someone else how to relate congruently. What people tell me who are NLP masters is that this adds to the depth to what they can do. What people tell me who teach anger management is the same thing. This adds to the depth of what they can do. So I think, to me, it's like not better than at all. It's like how to put as much information of the latest neuroscience together, everything we can put together, because we're in trouble in our world. How can we learn as much as we can about how to relate congruently ourselves and help other people? And it's not easy, you know. Virginia used to say, there's no cure, it's only evolution. You know, we just keep trying to learn how to come from the self as opposed to a defensive place.
That's it's a very needed topic to be congruent, to come from the deeper place, especially currently in corporate world where people are molded in a certain behavior and everybody is supposed to be happy and smiley. And even when they feel angry and they say, I'm angry, and they have this sort of incongruent smile on their face, or they pretend that everything is fine, but they're like having this frown and sort of constricted posture. So that is something that everybody can learn. How do you see this application more in corporations and organizations? And what would the leaders, the CEOs, would get out of it? Because many of them say, well, you have to deal with me like the way I am. I'm very effective, I'm successful, I do what I do, I'm maybe like an authoritarian kind of leader or pleasing leader, but it's been effective, and I've been driving profit and success for my company.
So what would you perceive would they be coming to you for something? Or
they would like to be a better leader.
Better leader.
They have conflicts, they have problems at home, generally they have relationship issues, but it's harder to admit unless there's something that is very valuable that they can learn.
Well, I think it's the concept of self-leadership. You know, that taking the leadership over here in one context, we're going to value that a lot, what you've achieved. And if you're asking, this is what I could add to it. I could add to your awareness, so that you've got greater choices in terms of your self-leadership with how you're dealing with your internal system and how you're dealing with your loved ones.
Yeah. And maybe they don't know Virginia per se, but we know that Virginia's methods and tools, they work, and coaches and educators or managers, they can just bring those tools into their toolbox, and during trainings, during presentations, they could also have that wonderful toolbox to be more congruent, be more effective.
Be more emotionally intelligent.
Right.
Yes.
Okay, very good. Tell us a little bit about the events and upcoming Satir celebrations or gatherings that people may participate in the next year, so that whoever is listening and watching, they can also, if they're curious, to find out more.
Yes. In October, the 27th of this year, there will be a week-long celebration. It's called the International Human Learning Resources Network, IHLRN. That's the acronym. And Virginia founded this organization 50 years ago, so they're celebrating. And they're holding a meeting at a resort in San Diego. And so they're hoping, I'm going to do the first plenary called From the Next Generation. I forgot the title exactly, but it's about handing the baton to people like you, Darya, you know, with great joy that we have this whole new generation of people who are ready to take the baton. And so that's what we're celebrating. Then in June, it's just being formed. There's going to be a Satir conference it's called Satir Europe. It's going to be in Bratislava, Slovakia. But the details of that aren't out yet. But I'm excited about that because I've been training I've trained somebody in Italy and Germany. I'm blanking, and that there are a lot of resources that are now coming through for, you know, that we could begin to really solidify a network in Europe. There's this very strong group in Slovakia and in the Czech Republic. And the one in Slovakia is going to be sponsoring this. But my hope is that people from all over Europe are going to get to know each other and feel connected. Because one of the longings I think that people have is to feel connected with others who are within the community, you know, and not feel so isolated.
Right. Yes. And I just realized that Virginia is probably one of the very few women in the field, like leaders and pioneers, as a role model to have and follow and support that different kind of approach to therapy. Because before her, most people, I think everybody, was a man.
Yes. And she took a lot of grief for that. Salvador Minuchin really, I guess, put her down for her nurturing approach at evolution of psychotherapy in front of thousands of people, so much so that what I've heard is that she never attended again. She was so hurt. And then I went to see him at the evolution of psychotherapy a few years ago in his 80s, and he said, I need to apologize to Virginia. I now really honor that people need empathy. They need compassion, you know, but it was too late. She'd already died by the time he realized that. So it's an integration. Again, it's integration of what he had to offer structurally about understanding families was beautiful. And what she had to offer was beautiful.
That's great. It's like having the giant, female giant behind us doing the work. And I'm very happy that there's a lot more interest also in Asia, and I know you do, and therapists do this work in China and Malaysia. And tell us more about that, and how do they know about Virginia Satir and your network?
Well, it's interesting. They just had a conference in Shenzhen, I think it was. 600 people attended and 50,000 attended via the internet.
Who are these people?
They're all interested in Satir. They've had John Banman has been teaching there for years from Canada, and then he's created a whole faculty that's both Canadian, American, and Chinese, and they've trained thousands of people, and now that's been reflected in the interest that's there. And people have said to me, why do you think it's so hot, if you will, in China? And I asked John, and he said, first of all, because Virginia truly honored the impact of ancestry and the importance of families, and that's so much a part of the Chinese culture. And then I read a paper which said that somebody wrote their doctorate on, why she was impacting, her teachings were impacting. And this person said that Virginia talked a lot about the freedom to express within a family and to know what you feel and to talk about what you feel. And that had been not acceptable within the culture. And so that freedom to feel and to talk about the feelings, evidently it's just pulling people. They're just drawn to it.
Yeah. And I think there's so much also consequences. There's so many consequences from the one-child policy that, thanks God, it's not anymore, but the feeling of restriction and the burden of being the only child, and the sadness of the controlling system that is now, we don't know what's going to happen with the whole social rating system, where the self-expression is marginalized and is not really welcomed, and what it does to the psycho, to the ego, to the psychology of a person, and the survival strategies that they have to adapt. I think it's a fascinating area to look into, and I'm so glad that there's so much interest in Asia and this work. I've also been invited a few times, and I never had guts to go, but I know there's so much work to be done there. But once our children grow up, I'm sure there will be a lot more trips to that area of the world. But also, it's just amazing how, on the country level, the trauma, the separation, the disconnect, affects, and how it affects the following generation. And I think Virginia's tools and approach is very much restorative.
Yes.
And reconnecting, and taking the whole family into consideration versus just focusing on one individual, like person-centered approach, or CUT, or even Gestalt. But current modern coaching tools are all about, okay, you're the individual, you have all the resources to do it all, but it's sort of like, this is the person versus Virginia's including the family as the bigger system that influences the person so much more than the person influences the system. And without taking into consideration the bigger elephant, the rider has very little influences to control the elephant, right?
Yeah.
It's wonderful. I'm so looking forward to seeing you in
yes, this is amazing. I'm delighted to know you're coming.
I wish more people...
You're what it's all about.
Yes. I wish more people would be more open to explore Virginia way. And in the midst of the craziness of this world and survival, people just are in the midst of kind of grit and like grinding life. Surviving. Maybe there's also an opportunity to have some space to reflect and learn these practical, easy tools. And they're so affordable. I was so impressed and positively surprised how you make it available to many people. So I really encourage everybody who listens to go and check the Virginia Satir network. What's the actual
website? www.satir, SATIR, global, global.org, O-R-G.
Wow, I just realized, Sharon, you influenced not just one, but the company that putting sort of more and more focus on is called Enrich. So it's how to be energy rich, or Enrich Global. So it's a combination of Enriching program that I studied with you and this global combination. And I wish many more people around the world would be inspired by your work and take it further.
Thank you.
We're welcoming the baton.
Yes, good.
Thank you so much. I want to thank you.
Welcome. You're welcome.
I look forward to seeing you in San Diego at the conference.
So much.